Hello, everyone, and welcome to Loot Goblins Learning. This is the first episode of many to come, but I thought it would be important to go ahead and get this one out of the way, since how it is very pertinent to our current situation. Now, today we'll be covering in a broad sense. I'm not going to go into any minutiae of details about most things, but in the simplest terms, we're going to be covering election laws, not strictly voter law or voter fraud laws or anything like that, though we will be covering that. I'm going to be going over some of the major aspects of all of this. And now, all of the information I'm giving you today is available online. Every last bit of it. And we're going to start with some of the reasons things happened and how those things came to be and what has led us to the current situation. Now, I will give you fair warning. I bit the living crud out of my lip, and so I may stumble on words a few times. My mouth is numb with Orajel. So, that is where we're at with that. But we're going to start with quote unquote mail-in ballot. Now, what has led us to mail-in ballots? Well, it is this act right here, the UOCAVA. Okay, that's a very stupid acronym for United States citizens covered by basically it's for military members. Uniform and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. All right. This is your original mail-in ballots. Now, why did this come to be? Well, as it states in the very beginning, the uniformed and overseas citizens absentee vote, uniformed. So what it was is we had all these, military members and things like that who were overseas and kept missing out on elections. We couldn't vote. All right. Now, this would come back to haunt most of us military members up until actually this election. And what I mean by that is most of our ballots were never counted. Why is that, you say? Every ballot should count? Well, let's put it this way. Most of the time, and we'll be getting a little bit more into this later in the non kid friendly version of this, which I will live stream while playing a game. But absentee ballots were never counted because we never got that far. There were never that many. It was usually 1,000 or 2,000 per state, right? And usually that's not ever enough to sway a election, especially a presidential election. So nobody really saw them. So they sit in boxes unopened 90% of the time. And until this current election and everyone's like, "Well, why do all of a sudden nobody can do this election thing on the night that it's supposed to be done? How come we've screwed this up so much?" Well, because normally when you go to a poll booth and stuff like that, they have pre-made little cards like you used in school, and they scan through in about like 1/18 of a second. And they just scan right through. Boom, 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 boom. It's easy. It usually happens before you even leave the voting area, before you've actually been able to run out. You drop it in the little box. It goes from the little box to the back. The back throws it through the machine. It scans it, reads it, sends off a little tick down the way via the internet. That's our current voting system. Now, All right, the Uniform and Overseas Civilians Absentee Voting Act was enacted by Congress in 1986. So this hasn't been around that long as it pertains to our government. It requires that the states and territories allow certain groups of citizens to register and vote absentee in election for federal offices. In addition, most states and territories have their own laws allowing citizens covered by this to register and vote absentee in the state and local elections as well. Now, I'm not going to go into every single state that I'm not going to go through 50 states worth of election absentee ballot laws. I will say this. This is the fundamental center of how we came to have mail-in ballots. All right? This is where it started. And it has been expanded on due to COVID-19 and the scare that it is in that. Members of the United States Armed Forces, Uniformed Services, and Merchants Marines, their family, the members, and United States citizens residing outside the United States. That's who this is supposed to cover. And there is a... All right, let's see. It requires it provides the option to request or receive a voter registration and absentee ballot application by electronic transmissions, and establish electronic transmission options and deliver of blank absentee ballot to the voter. Transmit validly request absentee ballots voters no later than 45 days before an election of a federal office, when the request has been received by that date, except where an undue hardship waiver is approved by the Department of Defense or for the election. Take steps to ensure that the electronic transmission procedures protect the security of the balloting process and the privacy and identity of personal data voters are using to proceed for the procedure. Expand the acceptance of the federal written-in absentee ballot to all elections for federal office beginning December 3rd, 2010. Right. This is an amendment done to this thing. So in 2010, it says, okay, it's basically not only the president. So they've already expanded upon. Okay, so you had this somewhat limited thing, and then it was expanded upon. This is when you start seeing absentee ballots starting to be counted. Except otherwise valid voter registration application, absentee ballot applications voted by... All right. State notarization requirements, restrictions on paper type or envelope type, and yeah. All right. Hold on one second. Where did it go? Yeah. Anyway, that is the basic gist of it. That is telling you everything this is supposed to cover. Nowhere in there does it say, oh, you can hand out mass mail-in ballots. This was just a footnote in the annals of how this came. This is the first step in the annals of how this came to be, should I say. Now, there is a key statement here where it states that, this is done so we can achieve the same level of discretion or security as other ballots. And what that means is you have to go online, submit it 45 days ahead of time so they can vet who you are, find out if you in fact have already applied for this before, or if you are still indeed a citizen of the United States. These are all things. This is why it says 45 days before, because it takes time to do that. And this is why this is okay And what they did, and why what they did is currently being litigated. It is under litigation. Okay. So then we move on to the National Voter Registration Act. And I'm going through these on purpose, folks, in this order on on purpose as well. Congress enacted the National Vote Registration Act of 1993 to enhance voting opportunity for every American. The act has made it easier for all Americans to register to vote and maintain their registration. Okay, so this allows you to get a ballot. However, you have to have this first. You can't just not be. You can register to vote, and then you can request your absentee ballot. Unless you are in the armed forces, in which you can request the ballot and register to vote at the same time, because they will literally do it in the same office. That is a luxury given to those of us in the military, or those of you in the military. I was previously, not anymore. It allows the Department of Justice to bring civil action in federal courts to enforce this requirement. The act also gives the responsibility to the Federal Election Commission to provide states with guidelines on the act to develop national mail voter registration form and to comply reports on the effectiveness of the act and amendment in Help America Vote Act of 2002. Transferred the FEC's responsibility under the act to Election Assistance Commission. All right. So, most people don't realize, and we'll be getting more into specifically Bush v. Gore here in a minute. So, but you can't. Most people think that Bush, some people think that Bush stole the election and yada yada yada, and you know, we are not so different than we were, 20 years ago. And now, mind you, it is at a greater scale this time than it was before, but it is the exact same thing that has happened once before. We had ballots brought in after the fact that were deemed to be uncountable due to the fact that they were not postmarked. It's the exact same thing. People like to think that this is some great conspiracy or great change to the situation, but that's why these things were put into place in 2002 to try to prevent this. That's the Act of 1993 was amended. That's why I read that to the FEC's responsibility. So this is supposed to help. The thing in 2002. This was put into place after we had the fiasco we had last time. It did, it accounted for much, but it did not account for what happened this time. In addition to whatever other method of voter registration which states offer, the Act requires states to provide the opportunity to apply to register to vote for federal elections by 3 means. The Act requires a state to provide individuals with the opportunity to register to vote at the same time that they apply for the driver's license, to seek a renewal for their driver's license, and requires a state to forward a completed application to the appropriate state therein. Section 7 of the Act requires the state to offer voter registration opportunities to all offices that provide public assistance and all offices that provide state-funded program. All right. So these are just going through all the different places it's required that you are given an opportunity to. So you all have plenty of opportunity to do this. Enforcement of the NERVA. After the NERVA became effective, several states failed to take steps necessary to comply with the law. This is those states involved in the first round of cases included California, Illinois, Michigan, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, New York, South Carolina, Vermont, Virginia. Okay. I wanted to point that out because we have Michigan and Pennsylvania. That's why I wanted to point this particular piece out. Two states that have already had an issue less than 20 years ago for voter issues. All right. And everyone's like, oh, well, that's 20 years ago. No, it's really not. It's not. In the annals of time, it is nothing. There's no way they've gotten it fixed. And that is the other reason I've brought this particular piece of information up. In 1993, they said you must maintain this registration. Specifically, two of the states that are under investigation have failed to do so, have had litigation brought against them for failing to do so a couple of times. This is not the first time, this is just one of the times. But I wanted to point this out. This is the only one I could find the actual hard copy of. I found notes in like Wikipedia, but I don't trust Wikipedia. All right, and then we're going to get into when you're voting, what you have to have. About half the states with voter ID laws accept only photo IDs. These include driver's license, state-issued IDs, military ID card, passport. These are the things you have to vote. Many of these states now offer free voter ID and yada yada yada. Other states accept some types of non-photo ID. These include birth certificates, social security cards, bank statements, and utility bills. All right. And I wanted to point this out because mail-in ballots the mass mail-in ballot like they did in Pennsylvania, which is already, as we saw, had litigation brought against it before for not properly registering voters and things like that. This is what is required something along these lines is required to vote in person. Mass mail-in voting does not require any of this. They just send it out to you. They don't know who you are. This is why this along with this, where you must maintain these things, this is why there is litigation brought against Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and Michigan. These are laws that are in place. Laws must be complied with for valid votes. Now, we are going to get into a little bit of the hairy area here. Now, I'm just going to point out the different kinds of voter fraud, and then I'm going to analyze them in respect to what we have going on. You're going to be quite surprised as to what you actually find and why President Trump doesn't understand the difference between the way words are used and the way words are identified. All right. These are technical, and I say that on purpose. Technical reasons that something is considered voter fraud. And I'm going to start out right off the bat pointing this out. Election challenges. Any result of an electoral management body investigation into suspected cases of voter fraud must be made public as swiftly and in an open, transparent manner as possible. They have done that. This will maintain confidence and integrity in the election management system. That is what they're shooting for. And allow changes in the election results to be political participants by the Electoral Management Authority itself. The dude retired, or the dude stepped down when they literally did the first law of this. So this is what the electoral management body responsibilities. The guy who stepped down the other day when Bill Barr had to step in to do his job for him. That is how that's why I wanted to do this one first and get that out of the way. The dude stepped down because he already knew he was in trouble and he's trying to stay out of the way. And I will say that 100% with 100% confidence. And yes, I know I used a lot of 100%s there. That is why the dude stepped down immediately because he already knew he was in trouble and he's trying to avoid jail time. And yeah, so and we'll get into that. It is $1,000 fine and 1 year in prison. It's actually not that terrible. If he screws up, it's actually listed in this that if you screw up doing this, it is 1 year in prison and $1,000 fine. Those are maximums. And I meant to say that beforehand, but yeah, those are maximums. What he'll get, who knows? Probably like a $8,000 fine or something weird like that. If the extent of the fraud detected is sufficient to have possible effects on election results, the election management body itself making the application and the relevant jurisdiction authorities that an election be set aside while will aid in projecting the image of the electoral management authority. So, and I wanted to point that out because they have failed to do this. Had they done this from the get-go, when the people, and that's why you have all these sworn affidavits, all these things of these people, because they're like, hey, we brought this up beforehand, and that's where this line right here, and especially will aid in the projection of the image of the electoral management authority vigilance. Okay. And professionalism, integrity, and face the attempts of... Okay, but what it's getting at there is had they set aside those results and had a count of how many votes were there, right? And they're like, there is either A, no possible way the other person can win, or B, there is no possible way that the person who is winning cannot continue to win. Because not all of those ballots are going to be for the other person. That's an impossibility. I don't care if it's a mail-in ballot or otherwise. It will not happen. Some votes will be for the other guy. It's just life, people. But by not setting those things aside and allowing somebody to investigate, that is how we ended up in this predicament that we are in. They failed to do their job when people were there telling them they are not doing their job. Okay? It's clearly laid out. This did not take me long to find. These are all government websites. This is literally laws on the books. These people have to know this to work in these. And I'm talking about the higher-ups, not the low-down people. People counting the ballots have no idea about these laws. I have no doubt in my mind that they've never Google searched federal legislature about election. That's how I came to find most of this stuff. All right. Security of materials. This leads us to the back to mail-in ballot. Mail-in ballots and why they are being contested. Where investigations of suspected voter fraud are undertaken prior to the expiration of any period of the challenge and election results. Care must be taken in handling any relevant ballot materials. Okay, Pennsylvania was already put under a court order to cease with certain ballots until they figured it out. They refused to do this. Now, if I were a member, or if I was voting in Pennsylvania and the people who were supposed to be doing this said they did this, regardless of what side of the block I was on, I would start suing. Not Trump, not Biden, but the election administration sitting right there. Because by doing this, they threw your vote away. And that's exactly what this says. They should be maintained and secured in an area, and the unsealing and resealing, when not in use, the relevant materials into the package should be scrupulously undertaken and witnessed. Witnessed. Strict care must be taken during investigations that no marking or are placed on the actual election material during the voting. There are several cases of people saying they are changing stuff. They are marking things. That's why it's so very important for you guys to just Google stuff. Figure it out. They did not secure the materials in any way, shape, or form. This is where the problem lies. This is where our issue is being challenged. Multiple voting, yada yada, no. That's not really pertinent to any situation. Yes, if you vote twice, you're doing it wrong. Right? That's not highly in our thing. Impersonation. Again, these are more clear-cut signs of voter fraud. This is not. All right, but I will do this. Voters have been challenged as to their identity in a voting station. The election system allows them to cast a sealed ballot pending further investigation. Impersonation in a voting by mail is detected by voter checking voter eligibility / identity statement, blah blah blah. Details. A handwriting. Sorry, that's what I was getting at there. From the mail ballot application to vote for registration application. And yes, I know they put these things in there, and this is legal speak. I can't help that. This is the information. This is what I have to go off of. So, but all right, where'd it go? I just lost it. Oh, the handwriting thing. Now there are multiple people who have sworn affidavits saying that handwriting analysis was overridden while they were counting ballots. That's not okay. It is stated specifically in the impersonation clause of the laws that it has to be identified when it's mailed in by handwriting if no other means can be done. That's why you saw so many rejected ballots in the early setup, but this time we had very few rejected ballots because they were told to bypass this. For whatever reason in Pennsylvania, they were told to bypass this. I cannot speculate onto a person's motive or reasoning behind it. I just know that it is illegal under the guise of the United States laws of voter fraud. Sorry, give me 1 second, folks. My lip is bleeding. Similarly, tongue went numb. Summarily, there we go. Irregulations may be detected where a number of mail-in ballots originate from the same location. And I say that again because by not allowing postmarking and allowing them to just drop them in boxes, that allowed this to happen. This is going to be a part of the contention. That's again why I bring it up. I'm not bringing these up because I'm trying to prove a point. I'm bringing these up because I want to explain to you folks where they're coming from and why. All right. Now, where was the other thing? It was... All right, yeah. So that's it for the actual voter fraud stuff. And he goes in to tell you that these have been seen in Uganda, Kenya, Syria, Iraq, India, Mexico. There's a These are just discussing all this stuff. But I wanted to go over that where it covers all the things that they're currently talking about and why Mr. Orange Man says fraud. Specifically because it is stated under the fraudulent U.S. law, voter fraud laws, that the things that they are doing are considered fraud. That is why he has stated these things. This is verbatim out of the federal law. That is why they are a thing. That is why he says it. However, in actual, like, the way people think about fraud, they think about people making ballots, or whatever. About people actually casting fraudulent votes. That is not the only definition of voter fraud. And that is why he keeps saying that, though he should not. Because in hit so this is just in a defense of why he's saying it, though I don't agree with it. And I don't agree that those are actually, like, I do agree that those are causes of fraud. I wouldn't call them straight out voter fraud. All right. So we will now move on to Bush v. Gore. Give me 1 second, folks, and I will switch that over for you. There we go. Now, there are a few things I wanted to highlight in here. All right. On December 8th, 2000, the Florida Supreme Court ordered that Alita, the manual records of ballots for the. Okay. I am not going to read all this legalese. I'm going to try my best to read through this again because I lost my page that I already highlighted everything on, unfortunately. Nothing close to can explain that the records before it. There would be no question that there were uncounted legal votes, i.e., those that were clearly in distinction. All right. On December 9th, this court granted that the state application treated the votes were all right. Man, people and they always wonder, well, like, why the average American can't follow this crap, because they speak as if they are in a different world. And in all honesty, I think that is something that needs to be done away with. Those are all the people who signed it. Blah blah blah. Palm Beach County was 170. All right, Vice President Gore in Palm Beach County was 176 votes, and the directed the circuit court to resolve that dispute or remand. Blah blah blah. The court further to held the relief. Right. All right. It was also ordered that the inclusion of the certified vote totals of 215 votes from Palm Beach County and 168 votes identified in Medellin County and Senator Lieber, blah, blah. Where'd it go? It took me a while to find it. Sorry, folks. All right. The Florida Supreme Court, however, set the deadline at November 26th. We granted whatever that word is. It means liabilities. Advocated Florida Supreme Court decision finding considerable uncertainty as to the grounds in which it was based. On December 11th, the Florida Supreme Court issued the decision to remand the restrained that day. All right. So I can keep going through this. There's just so much legalese, and now I feel bad, guys. Sorry about that. Manual count of the. All right. Okay, here it is. Here it is. Okay, got it. They held that the circuit court had been correct to reject Vice President Gore's challenge to the results, certifying that the Nassau County and his challenge to the Palm Beach County concerning board, determining that 3,300 ballots cast in that county were not in a statutory phase legal votes. And they actually quoted that. The Supreme Court held that Vice President Gore had satisfied his burden of proof under blah 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 with respect to his challenge. And I want to make sure you guys understand this was done on December 11th, right before they had to, certify their electorates. On which, all right, be manually count 9,000 ballots on which the machines had failed to detect a vote for president under votes. So 9,000 ballots went through the machine and it did not read any presidential votes. That's where this came into being. All right, had failed to detect a vote for president or under vote. Right. Nothing. The closeness to the election to the court expanded on the record that there could be no question that they were legal votes within the 9,000 uncounted votes, sufficient to place the results of this election in doubt. Got it. 9,000 votes is all it takes. We are way above that in our realm of votes that were not correctly counted by machines. We had 6,000 in one county. We have no idea how many other counties incorrectly. That is where that's where Bush v. Gore and Michigan meet. People don't like to make that understanding or that connection that 9,000 votes were incorrectly read by a machine. This is not the first time this has happened, folks. 6,000 votes in one county. Now, this was 9,000 votes in one county, but 6,000 votes in one county were incorrectly read. He's saying that and this was a one place usage, right? This was one machine. Now, back then they didn't have the programs like we do now. They are just basically tickers. They read the things, it's an eyeball, it read them. This was before what we have now. It was an eyeball that read the dots. For whatever reason, that machine's eyeball was not correctly aligned and couldn't read the dot for a vote for president. It didn't read it for Bush or for Gore, just so you were aware. All right. Place the results of the election in doubt. A legal vote is, as determined by the Supreme Court, is one where there is a clear identification of the intent of the voter. The court therefore ordered a hand recount of the 9,000 ballots in Miami-Dade County, observing that the contents, provisions, vest board direction that the legal judge provide any relief appropriate under such circumstances. Now, observing. And I want you guys to read that it was dictated in 9,000 votes that there must be observers there during this recounting, so there is no foul afoot. This was in 2000. Sorry, it just gets me a little irritated when people are like, well, these two things don't have anything to do with each other. You have to actually read the entire thing. And there's a whole lot of legal mumbo jumbo in here that I don't understand, right? All right, but canvassing the board is blah 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 necessary. Individual counties, the ballots are located. Just saying, you must do this for every single county. A manual recount or tabulation under votes. To do so forthwith, said the tabulation take place in the individual counties where the ballots are located. You can't move them around. Again, sworn affidavits stating ballots are being moved around. You have to count them where they are. You cannot move them. Moving them is a violation of the law under Bush v. Gore, under federal fraud laws. All of these things are, in fact, in place. These are all things that were happening. not just in Bush v. Gore, but I'm referring to the current election. Identified were the result of the partisan recount were legal votes that could change the outcome of the election. The Supreme Court therefore dictated the circuit court to include those totals and certified the results subjected to the resolution of the actual vote total from Miami-Dade. Right? So they found these 168 votes and they made them legal. Equal protection and due process clause, with respect to the equal protection, whatever. Closeness of the election and multiple legal challenges have the following to wake up. Have brought into sharp focus a common and therefore unnoticed phenomenon. Nationwide statistics reveals that an estimated 2% of the ballots cast do not register a vote for president. For whatever reason, including deliberately choosing no candidate at all, or some voter error. Okay, this is the one I wanted to actually get to. Now, they eventually did figure this out. They did not know this during Bush v. Gore. It was misalignment on the Scantron machines, right? Which equates to today to a program that is misbehaving. Again, direct connection between Michigan and Bush v. Gore. These are the things that people don't want to read. They don't want you to know, for whatever reason, as to why he's making this lawsuit under Bush v. Gore. It is not about the crux of it. It's about the things stated in here. That because of this, they nullified the entire election. People don't know that Bush v. Gore was elected via the Senate. So please, for the love of God, if you're going to speak on the internet, do a little Google search. Thank you all so much. That's the end of the Bush v. Gore section of this, and we will just carry on with our day. I will also be doing a live stream later this afternoon. Thank you all so much, and look for more. I'm going to be going over the entire Constitution, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you like the content, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will try my best to answer them. I am not a legal expert. I can only go off of what I can actually understand out of these damn things. And again, I do understand it. You read it. I have to read it like 6 or 7 times just to get to the crux of the situation. And so, anyway, thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.